So in the light of these issues of creation in Genesis chapter 1, which we'll then compare with Genesis chapter 2 to see if they do conflict or not, Dr. Baugh says in his book Panorama of Creation, on day number 6, we're looking at day number 6 as it says accounted of in Genesis chapter 1. On day number 6, the final animal life was created, and in order to keep the vegetation in balance, such huge plant-eating creatures were required, like big old dinosaurs. After the flood, the decline in the size and abundance of plant life would not have supported the dinosaurs for very long. Even elephants today in Africa are threatened by the lack of needed vegetation to support them. Reduced partial pressure in the atmosphere played an even greater role in the demise of the dinosaur. In the world before the flood, the light would be at its lowest pink hue at high noon because of the angle of the light passing through the firmament. This is the firmament, the water way up there, 7 to 9 miles high, I think, frozen crystalline water. But just as important, envision the firmament, this double bubble of crystalline water, and the effect it would have had upon the atmospheric pressure. The atmosphere would be pressurized to a greater degree than we now have. Researchers like Dr. Henry Voss at the University of Illinois have been able to approximate the atomic weight of such a canopy. This crystalline canopy would put a cap on the atmosphere. Atmospheric pressure today at sea level is about 14.7 pounds per square inch. Before the flood, the air pressure would have been about 2 times what it is today. Good for us to breathe. We're much bigger people in those days. The ratio of oxygen in the atmosphere would have been about 30% compared to 21% today. Some researchers have concluded that due to the pre-flood atmospheric conditions, which had greater amounts of oxygen, man could have run up to 200 miles without suffering fatigue. Amazing. It has been discovered in hyperbaric medical chamber experiments, especially in the sports field, that under these circumstances an open wound would heal overnight. It is therefore understandable how man could have lived to be several hundred years old and older, and even after the fall in this pre-flood world. Heavier air pressure and more oxygen in the atmosphere were conducive to much longer life. Another factor in the pre-flood environment, which was in man's favor, was much less radiation from the sun. The canopy above the earth acted as a filter to trap most of the shortwave radiation. It is the shortwave radiation that is causing man and many problems today. Before the flood, almost all of the harmful radiation would have been filtered out by the water canopy. Today, because of harmful shortwave radiation, man suffers genetic damage, cancer, and other health damage factors that shorten the lifespan. Also, there are certain microbes and disease germs that could not live in the pre-flood atmosphere, but they can live in an oxygen-depleted atmosphere today. In addition, there was a mist each morning that aided the oxygenation of the entire water table. More oxygen in the water would account for great whales, great sharks, and the chambered nautilus marine life forms that were gargantuan in size. The fossil record bears evidence that such creatures existed, but without more oxygen in the waters today, they could not live in contemporary oceans, seas, or rivers. The theory of evolution does not provide an answer as to how such enormous marine monsters live, but the creation model does provide an answer. An additional beneficial characteristic would be the extra oxygen in the atmosphere, and with the great assimilation of oxygen in the air, man was possibly 20% larger than he is today. 20%, okay, I'd be a foot or two taller. Adam and Noah were probably about 7 feet tall, and there were others who were even taller. In the 6th chapter of Genesis, we read that there were giants on the earth before the flood. What do you think that explains it? Look to the Bible, not to evolutionary answers. Compare Genesis 6:4. There were giants in the earth in those days, Nephilim. At Glen Rose, Texas, we have excavated some of the footprints of those giants, the author goes on to say. Their footprints were preserved as they walked over the muddy sediment in the early phases of the Noahic flood. The environmental context before the flood would exercise the full genetic viability for all life forms. That's defined as the full genetic viability is defined as the full capacity of a species to produce an enormous variety of characteristics within its own species without changing into another species. For example, today the dragonfly, which is a superior helicopter, has a wingspan not exceeding 6 inches. But in the fossil record, dragonflies have been found with wingspans of up to 36 inches. There has to be an explanation as to how at some point in time dragonflies grew to such gigantic dimensions. It would certainly require a greater concentration of oxygen. Conditions that would support such monstrous life forms, even in the insect world, scientifically dictate that there had to be such a canopy above the earth. So you reverse engineer it, and then we have engineering the other way. Yep, there it goes. The Bible's talking about the water coming down from the atmosphere down into the earth. In order to provide that much oxygen, would have to approach the level of toxicity unless the atmospheric pressure was greater. Another such an atmospheric condition can only such an atmospheric condition can only be explained in terms of a firmament. Therefore, we have to follow the biblical record of creation. Firmament meaning ice, crystalline ice. So we have to follow the biblical record of creation specifically, or the environmental chain breaks into unconnected parts. So let's not reverse engineering without connecting ourselves with the Word of God. The greater atmospheric pressure with approximately 30% oxygen would have created optimal conditions. Thus, dragonflies could have grown to a size supporting a 36-inch wingspan. Consider another illustration. In West Texas, there have been found a fossilized pterodactyl, a flying reptile with a wingspan of 52 feet. There is no way this flying dinosaur, as it has been called, could have flown with the current atmospheric pressure. It would have been utterly impossible. But with an atmospheric pressure of approximately 32 pounds per square inch, this flying pterodactyl would have had a field day. Scientific investigation mandates a time in the past when life forms required greater atmospheric pressure and filtration of the ultraviolet radiation, such as the biblical record very clearly presents. In all the annals of investigative research, only the biblical record gives the required mechanism to make this possible. Just a canopy of water vapor would not satisfy a completed and needed explanation. Water vapor collapses into vortices, eddies, and spiral circles of energy, but with a world energized by a firmament of compressed oxygen held in place by a layer of crystalline water which would keep the temperature at a consistent level, the necessary requirements would be the result. So somehow somebody had to create that, and God did. NASA had discovered in the examination of superconductive materials that when held near a magnet, the lines of force generated in the free flow of electromagnetic energy hold the materials in place, either above it or below it. In other words, researchers have not been able to find a mechanism for holding up a water canopy unless that water canopy has exactly what the Bible record clearly describes, a superconductive solid metallic base. Now, what is hydrogen? Hydrogen is a metal. Hydrogen would be such a base under these circumstances, and with a free flow of electrons, it would support itself above the dipole magnet of the Earth. All the laws of the physics known in current research show that this would simply support itself above the Earth. So nothing magical is needed. The science is already there, and it would be held there until warmer temperatures would moderate its enclosure. A superconductive canopy of compressed hydrogen in near metallic form was encased above and below in crystalline water. Think of that. Height, H2O. Oxygen in the middle, conductive canopy of compressed hydrogen on the outside. Hydrogen is the lightest metal known. And the stars were magnified through this canopy as if they were set in like jewels, because water can be seen through, or it is translucent. Dr. Baugh. The stars were shining at a distance, a startling characteristic of the pre-flood world. In Genesis 1:14-18, the stellar heavens are described. There's in verse 14, then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens. And indeed it was a firmament, to divide the day and the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens, to give light on the earth. And it was so. The stars, translucent, appearing on the inside of the earth, looking up, the starlight would be unbelievably magnified and gorgeous in color. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, sun and moon. And he made the stars also. God set them, Nathan, in the firmament of the heavens, and to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. See, now we're looking at Genesis chapter 1. Keep these in mind and see how Genesis chapter 2 fits in with details in a closer pan-in view. Dr. Baugh, the stars are in color. Wow. And the biblical record states that God set the stars in the firmament. The ancients described the firmament, as they viewed it, as a vault above the earth, and it was. And the stars were placed in this vault. These ancient myths speak of stars in a vault-like sky, which appear much closer than they appear now. Of course, this supports the concept of the pre-flood model with a crystalline, water-metallic, hydrogen composite canopy. Everything is already there. We just have to reverse engineer it. The biblical record states very clearly that God set the stars in the firmament much as a jeweler would enhance a diamond by placing it on a background of black velvet. The word set, Genesis 1:17, is taken from the Hebrew word Nathan. It means to add and yield. In other words, the stars are not physically placed in the firmament because they are great distances away. But as light from the stars penetrates the firmament, there is a very strong magnetic field in the middle. It is superconductive without any resistance to the flow of electrons. On each side is an electromagnetic field charged to a lesser degree in the crystalline water formation. What is then presented in a pressurized form on each is a photomultiplier, magnifier. Each photon of light which strikes the configuration from outside in the outside world where the stars are is multiplied by 10 because of the interaction in the atoms. On the earth side of the canopy, looking up at them like we are, the stars were seen with 10 times the photons that the light brought to the outer surface of the canopy. Boy, were those stars visible. Before the flood, the stars were seen by man as being about 3 times brighter than they are seen today. In other words, in the firmament, God set the stars, or added and yielded their dimensions in full color. What a gorgeous sky. You think we have gorgeous skies now? NASA has found that when a red filter is used in space, the stars appear in beautiful color. This is exciting because God put the stellar bodies in space for signs, for days, for months, and for years as stipulated. We understand that by observing the rotation of the earth in relation to the movement of the sun and the moon and other heavenly bodies, we can tell times. But now we can perceive that with the enhancement of the light, those before the flood could, by the configuration of the stars, tell time at any moment. They would not need a Rolex watch. They would have something far better. We don't need all these machinations. God made it perfectly in the technology. We don't need to invent a computer. Our brains would be perfect computers. Before the flood, Earth's inhabitants never saw total darkness. Research has indicated that the temperature would have been about 78 degrees Fahrenheit during that day. Imagine superior man with a perfect environment, perfect food, with perfect complete nutrients, no harmful radiation from space, disease microbes held in check. The pre-flood world was, in our understanding today, paradise. In the book of Job is revealed further information about God's awesome plan of orchestrated creation. Job 38:4-9. Where were you, God is asking Job, when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me, if you understand, who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together, they actually did, and all the angels shouted for joy while the morning stars sang together. Dr. Baugh says, according to the observation of radio astrophysicists, star by radio wave context are singing to us. Stars throughout the universe are emitting radio wave energy. Some entire galaxies are emitting almost nothing but radio wave energy.